Hello everyone, this is Don Rowley. I know that I promised that this Friday, today, I would be coming out with an article, written article on the bit that was written by Frank Paralelo about Frank Dukes proving his claims. But a few things have kind of dropped in my lap and I want to check them. So this is an update and an apology for not coming out. Now, for those of you that are not aware, Frank Dukes is a noted fraud and incompetent martial artist that claims to have learned ninjutsu from a man named Senzo Tanaka. For years he's been saying that, this man taught him ninjutsu, then went back to Japan and died. Senzo Tanaka is also the character of a fictional character in Ian Fleming's James Bond novel, You Only Live Twice. The obvious conclusion is that Dukes took it from the novel and tried to pass it off himself. Of course, Tanaka is, if not the most common family name in Japan, is one of the most. And Senzo was a pretty common name back at the end of the 19th century. So it's kind of like saying Chris Smith. There's hundreds and hundreds of people that probably have the name Senzo Tanaka. And nobody has been able to prove that anyone named Senzo Tanaka ever taught Frank Dukes ninjutsu. Nobody seems to have taught Frank Dukes ninjutsu. Nobody can prove that anyone named Senzo Tanaka was in the same room with Frank Dukes. But now this whole article is basically talking about a death certificate and such that they found in America. And here's the missing teacher, and here's the proof. Well, of course, with such a common name and the fact that Dukes didn't even know where he died until this thing showed up, decades after he started saying the story, I know when my teacher died. I know where he's buried. I know all these things. This is not proof by itself. The second part of it is that there's all this proof that there was a guy named Senzo Tanaka that was involved with the Japanese intelligence community. He was a spy and such that worked here and there and such. So, it's exactly the same story that Dukes tells so that kind of collaborates the story. Well, that's kind of the thing that kind of dropped in my lap, among other things. Two things happened since the video came out. One from Frank Paralelo this morning, the other from a friend of mine named Baron Shepard Wednesday night. Baron gives me a call and says that the source of the records and such, all comes back to a guy named Basha. Actually, Reverend Dr. Basha, PhD. Yes, I doubt that it's a real PhD, but I don't know. But Baron had interactions with him. Years ago, Basha was trying to put out a book that never went to print called Masters of Modern Ninjutsu. And it was mainly about Dukes, but there was a section there that mentioned, and talked about Baron Shepard. And Baron read it and called the guy up and talked about his lawsuit. And again, it never went to print. And Basha tells Baron that everything in the book basically comes from Frank Dukes. Oh, okay. So, this is not really an independent source. It all links back to Dukes. Now, some people are going to say, well, why should we believe what Baron says? Okay. Remember that. Why should we trust the word of anybody by themselves without independent proof, especially if they're a friend of someone? Now, this morning, Frank Paralelo, who wrote the article, made a comment on my video saying that, it really wasn't a source of Richard Deakin. It was Basha saying that was Richard Deakin. Of course, he mentioned the book and such like that, but it's not Richard Deakin that directly tells Paralelo. It was supposedly Richard Deakin that told Basha, and then Basha wrote about it in a book that Paralelo mentions, Masters of Modern Ninjutsu. Oh, he just kind of confirmed what Baron Shepard said. So, yeah, and it's not in this book. So where is it? It's all down to Basha's. And Paralelo tries to say, well, maybe it was a lecture, or maybe it was in a private correspondence. That's not journalism. There's no maybe when you're talking about proof, okay? Basha said it is Basha's word, and Basha is definitely a friend of Frank Dukes. So this whole thing, this source is discredited, period. Bam. The second source that they're relying on is basically the Imperial War Museum in Japan. And as I pointed out, there is no such thing as an Imperial War Museum in Japan. the entire idea of using the word imperial since 1945 is taboo. Now, again, Perillo tries to say, well, maybe he talked about this museum. No, no, no. No maybes. What museum was it? I refuse to believe that anybody that wrote down in a book that such and such came from such and such a museum did not actually know the name of the museum. Unless, of course, it came from hearsay from someone like Frank Dukes. If he had actually gone to a museum, then he would know the museum. If he interacted with the museum, he would know the name of the museum. He would not say the Imperial War Museum. So what we are looking at is basically, instead of an independent thing, we've got Dukes tells Basha, Basha writes it down, and Perella puts it down as independent proof. It is nothing of the sort. Now, if you have any problems with that, according to Basha, there are records, and this was quoted in the article by Perillo, there are records in the Imperial War Museum in Japan saying that Senzo Tanaka was an intelligence agent and a spy. Well, show me the records. I don't think Basha can read Japanese. I don't think Basha has been to Japan. I've been to Japan. I read Japanese. I've got friends in Japan that will do me a solid and find the records and send copies to me if you only let me know where the records are. You tell me where the records are, you make it public. Here are the records, here's the actual name of the museum, these are the sections or whatever. Basha can give it to you if he's telling the truth. I'll get it, hey, and I'll acknowledge it. If I don't do it, then probably somebody else will, just to embarrass me. Hey, here's your chance. Otherwise, the article and the proof has been totally discredited. Frank Dukes has been proven a liar once again. And until those records from that museum, whatever its name, shows up, you can't do a damn thing to shut me up. Have a nice day.